guys were open. Guys were open. And that's just, let's face it, through a stretch of football, it was bizarre to sit there and go, I'm watching these other teams. And it's not just, it's one thing if like Devontae Adams is getting open. You just go, well, fuck, he gets open. But just consistently get random guys open. Yet the Niners players, a part of it, Kittle missed a stretch, we're just always blanketed everywhere. It's like they got this offensive coach who's known as this offensive schematic guy. Like the thing Kyle hangs his hat on, obviously is the run game. But then when he passes off of it, or just run some pass plays, guys can just get wide open. And they were never fucking open.
We're glad you're watching our video. Take a moment to like. We're glad you're watching our video. We'd really love if you took a moment to like it and subscribe to this channel.
Yep, because you know that 50% of you watching right now are not subscribed. Make sure you do that and check out the podcast below in the description.
Thanks to our sponsor, Tito's Handmade Vodka.
#1 vodka in America. And last night, for the first time, and feels like all season long, that he had a game plan that was just, he had things mapped up all over the place. And that to me was, and there was a lot of like, where are all the Kyle haters now? Well, life's fluid. Football's fluid. Everything is fluid. Things change every single day. Yesterday it was warmer. Today it's cold. Kyle, for many games, let's face it, was terrible. Like he's had last season, they went 6-10. He's going to win more than 6 games last year. He was better the majority of the season last year than he ever was for a large stretch of this season. Last night was the Kyle Shanahan that was the reason everyone in this, all millions of Niner fans, one of the biggest brands in the league, that I'm sure that fucking television rating last night was massive, got behind this guy. Because it was like, he has different pitches in his bag. And it hadn't been there. And last night it was, and it could be he's comfortable playing that team. Maybe he looked in the mirror. I don't know.
I disagree a little bit. I think sometimes shit works and sometimes it doesn't. Now, you're right. It's your job to find the things that work. We saw Deebo Samuel running the football. Like, they did a bunch of stuff that worked. But I'm not sure that Kyle had changed that much. I think sometimes things work and then it builds on itself. There were plenty of contested throws that Jimmy made that were completed that on other days Jimmy throws too high. I don't know that Kyle changed so much as they got the lead. They drove the field. They scored the touchdown instead of kicking the field goal. They got a pick 6 on the second drive.
I'm not saying he changed. I'm just saying he called better plays.
Yeah, and I'm saying, I don't know. I'm not sure that he called better plays so much as the plays worked, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And I thought the fact that they got that interception early, they were able to scoring on 3rd and 6 on that first drive, I thought was massive. If they had to kick a field goal, I think it feels very differently. And then they get a pick 6. Jimmy Ward, the Niners have been dropping interceptions. They haven't been scoring defensive touchdowns. They scored. I think it just took the pressure off a little bit.
I'm going to push back there. I think you could make that argument for the Arizona game in a vacuum, that it was like, if we really looked into it, Kyle probably wasn't as bad as we were all shitting on him. But you don't lose 5 of 6 games in the NFL when you're a high-level coach without being in a little bit of a rut. Remember the
that's fine. I'm not debating that. I'm not saying it wasn't partly his fault or whatever, but this idea that suddenly he changed and that's why they won.
I'm not saying he changed. I'm just saying he had a better game. He just had a
and I'm saying that it's not like Kyle has a good game, they win. Kyle has a bad game, they lose. I'm saying sometimes you call good plays that work. Sometimes you call bad plays that or good plays that don't. Sometimes you call bad plays that do. I think it's an oversimplification to say suddenly Kyle's gotten better and now they're winning.
I'm not saying better. I'm just saying,
however you're saying it, I think it's a two-way street. Sometimes they work and it makes you look better. Sometimes they don't and it makes you look bad. And that's fair. That's a fine way to evaluate it.
But I think that's hard when you lose 5 of 6 games. Like if you have a 2-game stretch, 5 of 6 games is a pretty big sample size in football, right?
I'm not saying he was just the same guy the whole time necessarily. I'm just saying I think it's an oversimplification to say that he was bad and now he's good and it worked and it didn't because of him. I think I'm optimistic about them now because the math, they've given themselves a chance. But I think it's a little dangerous to everything worked for them. And that's not most games. Everything worked for them. And I think partly it started when they got the pressure off of themselves early.
100%. But I think we talk a lot about with players and any human being having confidence, right? And believing in yourself. The more confidence builds. I mean, you could call a college basketball game or football game, you can do it with pretty much ease now, right? I'm not saying it's easy to do, but I'm just saying you know how to do it. I could give you could call the fucking Egg Bowl. If you had to you'd be ready to go. But 5-10 years ago, you know, it would have been different. But if you just have an awful game or said something crazy on air, it could throw you off. It's no different. We talk about players all the time. Like, they get confident. Like, Debo's clearly confidence is built, and Debo now thinks every time I step on the field, I'm unstoppable. I don't think it's that much different for coaches, especially play callers. Like, you can just start questioning yourself. It's human nature, right? You hit a couple bad shots and you're having the round of your life. All of a sudden, it can derail you. And I think as a coach, even for a guy that's probably as confident and cocky as Kyle is, that the confidence is a big deal. And when you start losing, like, I do think you can just lose confidence. Like, is my shit working? Is my message working?
So how do you get confidence back before you've actually
you just fucking have a good game, and you just start realizing.
Point.
Yeah,
that's my point. It's like each play, like the play working in the third quarter works because it worked in the second. Something else worked in the second quarter, and something else worked in the first.
Well, yeah, he had a good game. He called his first good game, and basically a month and a half.
But my point is, part of the reason they've been bad is because they haven't had the first thing happen that leads to the second thing that leads to the third thing that leads to the fourth thing.
But he never had the problem, you would say, for the most part, the last couple of years of getting the first thing to happen, a pretty easy.
Or sometimes they've had the first thing, but they haven't. I think a lot of this goes back to their inability to do anything quickly on offense. Everything takes 11 or 15 plays, 7 to 15 plays to get down the field. And when that happens, a failed third down throws the whole thing out. You can't ever just hit a 65-yard bomb, boom, everything starts working again. I think that is the fundamental issue, where sometimes, Kyle, it can go way left because they have a 3 and out. Other times you hit 7, 11 plays in a row, and now you've got a rhythm.
Well, here's part of the problem, though, and I'm with you, and there's probably a lot to that, but Kyle's also responsible for the guys on the field. Remember that Dabo Sweeney thing? Like, I'm responsible for everything.
Totally.
So part of it is like, well, Jimmy was shitty. We all fucking saw it. The only guy who thinks Jimmy is good is David Lombardi, who I like David Lombardi, but his fucking Jimmy Garoppolo takes are just out of fucking left field. And Kyle was like insistent on leaving them there when he got this rookie quarterback. The guy we saw last night was clearly a lot different than the one airmailing everybody, right? And you know, part of, I think a lot of the anger is not just the play callers, but his insistence of like Garoppolo as he's throwing these balls all over the place. Like, what is going on? And if he gets a good Jimmy, yeah, his play calls are probably going to be better, but it goes back to him sticking with some of these guys. And luckily, their offense last night, because early on in the game, like, I don't think Josh Norman's going to be able to cover Odell Beckham. And last night, it didn't matter. Stafford was off. Their whole offense was off. But he's going to stick with Josh Norman. So part of, you know, me talking about Kyle being shitty is also stuff like that, right? The players on the field are under his watch, and he's choosing them to be out there or not.
Yeah, I agree. But Jimmy's had that game before that he had on Monday night, and that's Jimmy.
I know, but he had played like 4 or 5 games that looked like Jimmy shitty, you know.
Right, but that's also Jimmy. Like that's why he drafted a quarterback, but he didn't replace. Everyone wanted Trey Lance, us included. Although we said last week this is not the game to play Trey Lance, and he didn't make that change, and it still worked. I mean, you're right. The coach is responsible for everything. I'm not trying to reduce his responsibility. I'm just saying I think we can overstate. I think the fundamental issue, again, is it takes so many plays. They walk such a fine line. This is why they need a different quarterback, big picture, because it takes so much. So many different dominoes have to hit in order for them to be on rhythm. And I think
I guess what I'm saying is that your argument of the play calling, I think there's probably a lot of validity to that. I think a lot of the animosity is also to the personnel stuff that we have talked about, which I think Kyle's under a lot of heat for, and it's all in a weird way kind of connected, right?
Right. Because he is the personnel guy, and he doesn't have personnel solutions for some of the problems that he's created or that they have. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, yeah.
I mean, we've kind of talked about him here, but I mean, we can keep, because here's what you can't deny, right? For anything about whether he's changed or evolved, you know what it was? If I were going to agree with you and say Kyle needed some confidence and that he found some confidence, because my question was chicken or the egg. How do you get confidence before you have confidence? How do you get confidence before you've done something to earn the confidence?
You have to do it.
Well, but maybe it's partly this. Kyle Shanahan owns Sean McVay, who owns Pete Carroll, who owns Kyle Shanahan, is the NFC West Circle of Life. Tweet from Joe Fan. Kyle Shanahan's won 5 in a row. Maybe we were looking at the Rams game wrong the whole time. that it was coming at the wrong time. Maybe it was coming at the right time. Sean McVay has, in his career, lost 24 regular season games in 4.5 seasons. He's been really good. 6 of those 24 are to Kyle Shanahan. So Kyle Shanahan has accounted for 25% of Sean McVay's losses. Maybe he got his confidence, John, because A, they did some good things offensively in a loss to the Cardinals, to your point, right? That maybe those 2 fumbles, maybe they win the game if not for that, as you said. Maybe playing the Rams came at the right time for them. Maybe they just know how to play this team. And the Rams, in some ways, Stafford hasn't played great. And so while he's not Goff against them on this particular night, he didn't create the problems that maybe he will if they meet again and Odell is more involved in the offense.
You know, I think for the first time, because a week ago, the injury bug didn't help them, right? I mean, they felt Colt McCoy and they were awesome and they kicked their ass. Robert Woods, you felt that last night. Their whole offense was out of whack. So they definitely benefited from that. But they also that game they played last night probably beats every team in the NFC West, or at least gives them a chance to win all the games. At home, Monday Night Football, them coming out like that, they got a chance. Now, they probably don't win by that margin if they're playing Kyler or Russell, who are playing at a higher level. Like, Matt Stafford was really bad. So anytime, and this is the flip side of like talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, like when you're Kyle Shanahan, you're calling these plays and your quarterback is really shitty, and then you get down and you have to keep calling, pass plays, you're going to lose. Like Matt, if you're down by multiple scores and you're calling pass plays and your quarterback, whether it's a rookie, whether it's a 8-time Pro Bowler, whether it's Matt Stafford, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and they're off, I'd say in the game of football, you're probably fucked, right? You're going to lose. So it might have just been the Niners played really good, and they also just got Stafford, who was atrocious. Like that was, that was really, really bad football from. So no matter what Sean McVay did, was just really bad. Like part of the dominance I always felt like when the Niners played Goff, and you and I have talked about this for years, is like he was kind of a sitting duck back there in the pocket. Stafford was letting the ball rip. It was just flying all over the place. It wasn't like he was getting sacked all the time. He was just, what's going on here? Does he even know where the ball's going? Yeah. He was terrible. Like it looked a lot different when they were on offense than it did with Jared Goff. Like that's not what Jared Goff had looked. Jared Goff was like skipping balls. Jared Goff was crumbling in the pocket. And I don't mean that. Like I like, Peyton Manning was asked last night, like I like Jared Goff too. Peyton Manning, you could tell, did not want to criticize Jared Goff because Phil asked him like, what's the difference of Jared Goff and Matt Stafford? I am not an anti-Jared Goff guy, but he just can't move. So he's a sitting duck. Stafford can move a little bit. His balls were just all over the map. They just really were. And so if the Niners get that, like if they play a quarterback who's going to be really shitty, the Niners can win games. But that also works, like the Niners have lost a lot of games because their quarterback has played like that. It's just the NFL.
I mean, as it relates to Kyle, we talked about his body language last week. I think one thing you start wondering, is there a point where a team loses so much that they lose faith in a coach? I think if that were at risk of happening, you don't get a performance like they had on Monday Night Football, right?
No.
I mean, people like Twitter had lost faith, but I don't think players.
But I think most fans had too. Like fans were down. Someone texted me last night.
Same thing. That's what I meant.
The resale market, coming up with some of the lesser games. I think the Bengals come here is really down.
Somebody tell the resale market the Bengals are solid.
Well, I mean,
resale market could use a Bengals win this weekend.
Yeah, they could.
But but to the point on Kyle, like I think part of what they showed was that he still has him inside of him. Like we'll talk about the players, but we disagree a little bit on how it happened. I do think we can agree that it had to happen for him, given that it just felt like every loss stacked on top of another loss, stacked on top of another loss. He's not a naturally glass half full guy, and that makes it particularly difficult when you're losing.
Well, because like I said about the confidence, the only way to get confidence is to do things and then have success. There's no other way to do it, right? You have to do it and then it to go well. But you have to do it. And Kyle has just been losing a lot. Like he's just been losing all the time. All these other guys, Vrabel, LaFleur, these guys win. McVay win. For whatever, Kyle's just losing. And we can make excuses for every individual game, but the losses kept coming. And the best part about football, unlike basketball, like the Warriors play tonight, like does the game really matter that much against the Nets? No, there's fucking 82 of them. They could win by 20, they could lose by 20. It doesn't mean shit. it's going to be fun. I got a little money on the over, but it's like, whatever. In football, like every game, and especially like, I would say like every 3 or 4 game stretch is a lot of the season. So when you lose a ton, I think it was very fair to like, what is going on? Because you eventually, a good coach just finds a way to win.
Hey, we've had our last 9 locks of the week in a row, and we've been hitting it at mybookie.ag, promo code HAM and the number 1.
Hey, are you a small business owner? Are you looking to hire? Go to Indeed.com/ham, $75 off your first job post. Whether it's, think about the Chiefs a couple weeks ago. Their season felt like it was in shambles. Then Rodgers gets COVID, and he's out, and they're playing Jordan Love, and it's just like, then the game's going on, and they're kind of playing like shit, but they just found a fucking way to win. And all of a sudden, they win the game 13-7. You're like, they just won a game. It sucked. And I don't think they were really happy about it, but they just got to win. And then they could just breathe as they got ready for the next. The Niners haven't been able to just breathe and get ready for the next big game. You know, because ultimately the Jags, like, they should win that game. But just have a win where the next week is like Seattle or Arizona or Dallas. You know, just another big team. Like, that's. But you can breathe going into the big game. They've always just kind of been against the ropes this season. Right. And that's what happens when you lose a lot. When you know, like the Jets or the Jags lose a lot, but it's like none of their games mattered to begin with. Like the Niners, part of it was like, we're not totally dead, but we're hanging on by a thread. I think it's hard in football when you're just hanging on by a thread, you know?
Because the pressure goes up, and you need the pressure to go down.
And then the moment you get down, like in the game, like, oh, I'm down 10-3, like we better not go 3 and out. And you kind of feel it watching it.
Yeah,
they needed that last night, and Kyle needed that in the worst way, where you could just breathe a little bit.
The worst thing you can do as a coach, right, is try and be something that you're not. And so the solution for Kyle was never just start smiling more. Just, you know, be more smiley. Cheer a little more on the sideline. Jump up and down and hit guys on the helmet. I saw last week, you know, our guy Jonathan Smith there's the Manning curse people have been talking about, but there was also the Ham curse. Jake Hayner, then they lose. Actually, they won the next game, but then they lost to Boise. Jonathan Smith comes on. They lose their next 2 games while they're on the verge of becoming bowl eligible for the first time since 2013. Well, they won last week. And somebody posted a video from the sideline of a big touchdown that got scored, and they were filming from behind Jonathan Smith on the sideline. It was like a huge score. Place is going nuts. Jonathan Smith's he not only does he not celebrate, like his shoulders don't even move. Like there's no arms in the air, nothing. And they asked him about it, and he was like, you know, I guess that's just my nature. I'm always so focused. He's like, you know, the thing when you're coaching the game on the sideline, you don't get to rewind the TV and watch the play again. Like you have to really absorb everything that's happening because it's going to be your only look at it. Maybe you can look up at the video board and get a replay, but you can't rely on that. So what you're doing is he said, what I'm doing, I'm absorbing what's happening, and I'm just thinking about the next thing we have to do. And that's why that, for me, maybe I'm naturally just not that guy to begin with. But we watched some of his highlights as a player. Like he was jumping around and high-fiving. As a coach, that's just not. So he can't. If he tried to act like Kalani Sitake and started running around the sidelines high-fiving people like crazy, he would not be doing the thing that he feels like he needs to do, you know, to stay on top of who he is.
BYU coach is like a Robert Saleh?
BYU coach is like Saleh on steroids, John. You should see him.
I don't think I haven't watched.
Oh my God, he is like, you would think he was a player. The level he celebrates at, I would say, I don't know if there's a coach in football right now that celebrates as much as BYU's head coach Kalani Sitake. I mean, he's doing like the arms up and down and the chest bumping and the high fiving. I don't know how he does that and decides, you know, whether or not to go for 2. I mean, it's crazy.
My favorite one is when Chris Peterson, when they scored the Ian Johnson 2-pointer, and he does the
yeah, true offensive. That was one that he probably drew up on Tuesday. I don't know how you describe that for the podcast listeners, the move that you just made.
Yeah, well, Kellen Moore also has a GIF where I think he looked at him and he does it too. I think they both, I mean, they're probably the same person at this point in time, don't you think? Kellen Moore, Chris Peterson went into Kellen Moore's body and they like created him.
I can only imagine, like, Chris has to be sending Kellen ideas every week, right?
I'd imagine they're pretty close, yeah.
EKBZ on the stream says PJ Fleck. He basically doubles as the Gophers mascot. In any event, that's not Kyle.
They ain't winning very much anymore.
No. Kyle's thing is fist, like you pointed out to me, right? Kyle has a thing. Fist pumps. That's it. And they're not and there's no smiles that come with them.
But I don't think it was like I still stand by the body language being really shitty. And you're allowed to be like Tom Brady. If you watch the press conference he did, I just saw Howard Eskin, who just hates the Patriots because he's an Eagle guy and they always talk shit about Tom Brady and Belichick. Posted like a 2-minute clip of Tom Brady after the Bucs lost the football team, and Tom Brady was a miserable prick. And Belichick clearly has had some losses where I think he's notoriously like just leaves the Super Bowl. I don't even know if he shakes hands. He just takes off. Not a sore
John. No, John. He didn't shake Mike Martz's hand after they won the first Super Bowl. Martz was waiting for him. Belichick never showed up. He doesn't shake anybody's hand ever.
I do think there's something to Lombardi's famous quote, which I've heard is debated whether he actually said it, but you show me a loser or you show me a sore loser, I'll show you a loser.
Yeah.
The problem is when you lose a lot, and let's face it, we've talked about Kyle's record a lot. He has a lot more losses than wins for the way we talk about him. Like Google Mike Vrabel's wins. So when you act like a petulant's the wrong word, but just a miserable, like just awful on the sideline, people go, God, man. Now when you're winning, he's not even smiling that much either, which is fine. When you win, you're allowed. When you win a lot, Mike Vrabel can do whatever he wants now. If he wants to be pissed off after a loss, it's like, well, I just won 8 of my last 10 games, right? We're the number 1 seed. Belichick, Brady, they're allowed to do that. It is like you do get nitpicked when you just lose. And that's what I'm saying about Kyle. Like, people just win. And if you can win, just do whatever you got to do. Just rattle off some wins, and everyone will get off your back. It's a pretty basic formula in football.
There's no question.
But he's been losing a lot. That's the thing, a lot.
Right.
And I think people lost faith in him.
But him not smiling isn't the problem. Him losing is the problem. I give him credit for being the same guy, being consistent. To me, what's important is that you treat. I think what's critical is that you treat your that you make sure your players understand that you're not blaming them and that you're solution focused.
For sure. And that's not. It doesn't feel like the players have dropped him.
No. But that's what I'm saying. Is like the losing made the body language that he always has look worse.
Yes.
He's not built to lose.
Isn't that the way life works a little bit though? Right? When things aren't going well, like people's like, man, just fuck. No one wants to be around a negative Nancy when everything's shitty.
Absolutely. But I also think you get credit for being the same guy, for being consistent as a person.
Yeah, he's not a front runner.
Right. But I guess my question is then what could he have your point, and I agree, is the way to change his body language is actually to have the same body language just to win while having it.
You just don't lose. But like you're going to lose.
But that's not a body language issue. That's a winning and losing issue.
Well, yeah, you're going to lose, 5 times in a month and a half. Like people are going to hate the way you just carry yourself. If Belichick lost all the time, what was the famous thing I think Wickersham wrote that Robert Kraft told someone? The moment, like, if this guy didn't win so much, I would want to spend a minute around the miserable SOB. Like no one wants to be around fire him. But he wins all the time. So it's
you
like
wouldn't spend any time around him because you'd fire him.
You win all the time, just win at a higher clip. You can do whatever you want.
But I think one thing's clear. I think we'd use his father as an example. His body language, Kyle could get fired from 6 jobs and his body language isn't going to change.
I know, but for the most part, the football team, but like when Mike was in Denver, he consistently won.
Yeah, but we're talking about winning and losing as if it's the same, like winning and losing. That's the thing.
But I'm not talking one game or two. I'm just talking, just start winning 10 games a year and everyone will get off your back.
Right, but that's not a body language thing. It's just when you lose, we find a million different things that's wrong with you.
Yeah, but most if you're a constant loser, you those guys tend to have to kind of be positive to we're not going anywhere. Kyle carries himself like he should be winning 13 games every year. It's like when hitters get mad when they pop up and the pitcher gets pissed. Like, bro, you weren't supposed to hit that out. Like, are we sure you're supposed to go to the playoffs every year? Because your resume would say no. That's where I'm just saying. Everyone, you just start rattling off some winning seasons, people will love you. And I think he teeter-totters, though, but he loses a lot for a guy that's anointed. So he's kind of in this weird there's not a coach like him, guy. Yeah, there isn't a guy that exists like him.
Of course, but that's external. What does that have to do with his body language? Like you're saying, you're right. He makes himself a target by not being a smiley, happy guy.
I'm not saying he's going to change.
But that's
clearly
his problem.
Not. Yeah.
That's for him to deal with if he loses. right?
No
But
one will give a shit if he wins.
Of course. But I'm saying maybe that should be a hint to us that we shouldn't give a shit when he loses, that his body language doesn't involve smiling.
Well, I know. Well, hopefully he's not losing 10 times a year, so we don't even have to talk about it that much, right?
Well,
That's the problem.
My point is maybe that's an unfair criticism that he's not a smiler.
Yeah, but I do think when you're, going 6-10, 4 out of 5 years, people think, and I think this is understandable from just a guy who's a diehard fan watching the couch, like, does this guy even want to be here?
Yeah. I think that can be unfair. If that's an unfair criticism then, if the person actually wants to.
Well, most guys that, don't average 7 wins a season don't last. You don't have to watch them 7 straight years.
Oh, exactly.
Right? So he's had a bizarre career,
He's been very unique. Somebody in the chat said his dad had John Elway. His dad had John Elway kind of late in John Elway's career. If he had John Elway earlier, imagine what could have, if he had been John Elway's coach from 1992 on. What year did he get there? Or actually, 92 was actually kind of close to when he got there. If he had John Elway from 88, maybe.
Yeah, he got there in his first year. They were 8-8, 13-3, 12-4, 14-2. Elway retires. They go 6-10. Then they go 11-5, 8-8, 9-7, 10-6, 10-6, 13-3, 9-7. So that's
he's one of the. Mike is one of the greatest coaches of all time. I think Mike's one of the great coaches in NFL history. I'm not putting him in on top 5, but
he's pretty good.
Like I bet if we got, if we asked, if you just got like a bunch of coaches together, contemporaries.
Yeah, people. I know Belichick loved him, but I would just say this: Andy Reid's resume is better, won a lot more. Now he just has that extra Super Bowl.
Andy does, yeah. Or Mike does.
I'm saying that this 2 Super Bowls make it sound pretty sweet. Like his seasons were good, but a lot of the 10-6s in there. It's not like he was going 13-3s and like going to AFC Championship games all the time.
But what percentage of coaches?
No, I know he was above. I mean, he was an above average, borderline Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
Like if you said in his prime, would I take Mike Shanahan, Tony Dungy, Bill Cowher, or something? Like if you gave me, you could pick Mike Shanahan. Those guys are in the Hall of Fame, but I've always said that I think the Hall of Fame started getting a little too easy to get into for coaches.
Mike, if Dungy's in the Hall of Fame, Mike Shanahan should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.